what is reflection? Most of the time people think of an image in a mirror or a sunset over a lake. And while those are very valid forms of reflection and they're beautiful, they're timeless, there are many other ways that we can look at recording reflections of the world around us. The image you see before you was taken by Michael Pistonio in Ottawa, Canada, and he shot himself looking into a puddle that had filled up after a rainstorm in a pothole in a road. And as he was photographing himself and the buildings around him, which give the indication that he is in the city, a plane flew overhead. To be impressed by that, you have to try taking that same shot yourself. It's really hard to capture anything moving, but to have managed to locate himself at the precise plane of that the plane would fly, the precise place that a plane would fly over, set all this up, meet principles and elements of design, and record this image is truly impressive. Okay, another example of, oops, I don't know what's highlighting that. I don't want you to be blue. There we go. Okay, another example by Lorenz Kleinheider from France was he took a photo with a reflection in a window where you could still see through the window to what's outside. Now, I've seen some really cool ones too where there's also somebody wearing glasses. There's a reflection in the glasses as well as out the window. So that gets really more complicated and complex that way. But the great part about this is you can see he's looking out the window. Now, sometimes you'll see images like this where someone's looking out the window and they don't show you what they're looking at. And they leave that to allow you to question or fill in the gaps. In this case, you can kind of see what he's looking at, but it's out of focus. You know he's looking outside. Does that mean that he's wishing he was outside? Does that mean he's watching someone leave? What does that mean? And the thing about every photograph is it has a story behind it. And you as the viewer want your audience to decide what that story is. It's how you bring them into your work. It's how you get them to engage. The reality is we are bombarded with billions of bits of information per second. And our conscious brains are only capable of selecting and processing about 50 to 60 bits per second. And that means you have to make decisions about what you look at, what you consciously reflect on, because it takes energy. Our brains are these massive supercomputers and they use a lot of energy. And so we have to decide how to efficiently best use that energy by making decisions about what we're going to think about. So in this case, the author of the photographer has pulled you into the story by telling you just enough about it. You know there's someone looking out a window and you know he's looking outside. And then you can fill in the rest. And you're now brought into that story. You know, every time you see that photograph, you think about his story, his experience. Can you relate to it? Do you relate to it? Let's see. I want to make sure this shows up in the screen. Move this down a little bit. Whoops. Sorry about that. Trying to get this to fit in the... There we go. This is really cool. This is absolutely beautiful. Let's see. This is taken by Sarah Gallows. And she's in Rwanda. And she took a photo... or he, I'm sorry, I don't know if Sarah's a he or a she. They took a photo with a hand reaching towards the water and captured the reflection of that hand in the water. And then they inverted the photograph. And it made this really interesting image that looks like a hand is reaching up into the water. So you can take photos and rotate them. So this is just one very clever, creative way of capturing the reflection of the hand that has been distorted by the water, turning it upside down and creating a very interesting image that brings people in by having them say, okay, well, wait a minute. Something's not right. What is it? Let me take a closer look. A reflection can also be in glass, as we saw with the window, or the image. I mean, the pane of glass in the window. This one is in a sphere, right? When you look in a sphere, the image is inverted. It's upside down. And so this is a person holding a glass orb, Yeshi Kangra from Toronto. Water and sky. The horizon creates the plane of symmetry that you reflect about, right? So this image becomes reflected down here so that it creates this symmetrical illusion of balance. This is a water reflection. This is probably taken in Bolivia. There's a large salt flat down there that it rains seasonally, and you can walk out. It's flat. You can walk out for miles, drive for miles, and you get these beautiful sun or sky reflections, big sky reflections in the water. And you'll see a lot of images where they've captured reflections in the water. It's really beautiful. In fact, he's from Chile, which is near Bolivia. Let's see. This is an example, and you'll see images around once you start noticing them, where people do use mirrors, but they use them in a way that they don't normally use mirrors. It's meant to reflect images in a capacity that's different than just looking into them. Now this one's really cool. Look at this. Yeah. Let me overexpose it. Whoops. Expose it a little more. Okay. So this image is multiple mirrors that are tilted at different angles. And here's our subject sitting on a set of stairs, and there's a mirror, or there are several mirrors that are set up in a way, and it's probably part of the interior architecture in a mall, that's now reflecting the stairs. And it's really interesting because you see the person, and you see all this going on around them, and it's this breaking up of the monotony of the world around them, and really beautiful. Eric Eastman is the photographer here, and the title is called Reflective Triangles. Here's one by Vialis Hirschman, where the image is a puddle of collected rainwater in a street, and the photographer in Switzerland got down very, very close to the ground, and you can see the line up here on the edge of the photograph cuts off the buildings. You can only see so much of those, but the rest of the image, the reflection down here, shows what's going on up here. And that's one of the really cool things about reflections in photography, is they allow you to see beyond the four edges of the photograph itself. It's another nice one with, you really can't see her whole face. You can see part of her face, but you can see the rest of her face in the reflection in the bus window. What's she looking at? Where's she going? What she's thinking about? All stories. That was quite beautiful. Flamingo. They stick their heads underwater and they filter out brine, shrimp, and other crustaceans in the water. It's actually how they're pink. And the ripples in the water and the reflection of the flamingo, and kind of abstract. It takes you a minute to kind of see what you're looking at. But the eye is perfectly in focus, and eyes always should be. And speaking of reflections, right, eyes are considered reflections of the world. You can use eyes for reflections. Speaking of, yeah, you can't really see much there other than a prism, but you can use the eye to capture reflections. Let's see what else we have here to talk about. You can use glasses to capture reflections, buildings. I'm going to show you some of my work that I shot here that I've taken in Atlanta. Just wanted to look at a few more. This one's kind of nice with the reflection. Well, what's interesting is they actually took two different two different photographs and blended them together, I think. It looks like, because they look closer here in the blurred part versus the reflection. And you can do some really cool stuff like that, where you can maybe have one image here and then one image here that reflects, you know, an hour into the future or a year into the future, and tell a story that way. And that makes for, you know, a really great story frame. Let's see what else we have. Just like to show you guys other people's work besides my own. I'm scrolling through here. This one's pretty cool. There's someone sitting at the end of the ledge on the building, and the reflections from the building of the other building, and creates this very symmetrical image, but it's very abstract and interesting. All kinds of... Okay, so let's move these over. So this is an image I took. This is at... get it in the screen here. This is an image of a building on the UNC at Chapel Hill building. It's a science building, and this building is mirrored. What's really interesting is the reflection of this building in this building creates this illusion of a much bigger, wider open space, and it creates this really, really cool, interesting reflection. Let's see what else I'm going to show you here. You can also use reflections. Like the door here is reflecting the car right outside of it. So you can use glass to show, as I said, to show bigger, more, right? I know what's going on the other side of this scene because I can see the car. This one's kind of interesting because it's very abstract. I can't get this to shrink down here. Very abstract image, a reflection of the sun's always interesting. You can see the sun through the clouds. Scale this one down. This one shows a reflection. Whoops, not in the screen there. Okay, this one has fish in it, but we have a pond and a little figurine, and the reflection here, it's completing the circle. And if you can ever do that with a reflection, it's a really, really cool effect. Let me show you another one of building reflections. Whoops, this is an interior. The stained glass will cast light color reflections. And then this last one, and we're going to stop this video here. I can only go 15 minutes, or it won't let me upload it, and we'll continue in the next video.